Now let's put on a smile.
At some point, you stopped living your life and started performing it. Not all at once, slowly. So slowly you did not even notice it happening. You began choosing words based on how they would land. Choosing clothes based on what they communicated. Choosing silence over honesty because honesty risked disapproval and disapproval felt unbearable. You shaped yourself around other people's comfort so consistently that eventually you forgot what your own comfort even felt like. That is not living. That is auditioning every single day. For people who never even asked for the performance, and the exhausting part is nobody forced you. You did it voluntarily because somewhere early in life, something taught you that being accepted was safer than being real. Maybe it was a parent whose love felt conditional. Maybe it was a friendship group that laughed at the wrong version of you. Maybe it was simply the repeated experience of being yourself and watching people respond with distance or judgment or quiet disapproval. And your mind, trying to protect you the only way it knew how, learned a dangerous lesson. Change yourself before they reject you. Shrink before they push you away. Perform before they decide the real version is not enough. That lesson felt like survival once. It became a prison later. Because here is what approval seeking actually costs. It costs your opinion, not immediately, gradually. You start agreeing with things you do not believe because disagreement feels socially dangerous. You start laughing at things that do not amuse you because silence feels awkward. You start nodding through conversations where your actual thoughts would create friction, and friction feels threatening. And day by day, your inner voice gets quieter, not because it disappeared, because you kept interrupting it, keep editing it, keep deciding it was too risky to let it speak fully. Until one day you realize you are sitting in a room full of people and you have absolutely no idea what you actually think about anything anymore. That moment is terrifying, and it is also the beginning of something important. Because that emptiness, that strange hollowness of having no opinion that feels entirely your own, that is not weakness. That is the symptom of years of self-abandonment. And recognizing a symptom is the first step towards stopping it. Not fixing it immediately, just stopping. Just deciding that today you will not edit yourself before speaking. Today you will not rearrange your personality to fit the temperature of the room. Today you will sit with the discomfort of possibly being judged and not collapse from it. That decision sounds small. It changes everything. People who stop seeking approval do not become arrogant. That is the first misunderstanding. Arrogance is performing superiority for an audience. What happens when you genuinely stop needing approval is actually the opposite of performance. You become quieter, more settled, less reactive. Because when other people's opinions stop functioning as your emotional weather system, you stop being moved by every passing storm. Someone disapproves of your choice. You notice it, you consider it, you let it go. Not because you became cold, because you finally understand that their discomfort with your decision is not your responsibility to resolve. That realization alone changes the nervous system. Think about how much energy you spent managing other people's perceptions of you. The mental rehearsals before difficult conversations. The replaying of interactions afterward, searching for moments where you might have come across wrong. The constant background anxiety of wondering what people are thinking about you right now in your absence. That is not living. that is surveillance. You were surveilling yourself constantly on behalf of other people who were mostly too busy surveilling themselves to think about you at all. That is the painful irony of approval seeking. The audience you were performing for was never watching as closely as you believed, and when you finally begin releasing the need for that approval, something unexpected happens. The silence where their validation used to live does not feel like emptiness for long. It starts feeling like space. Room to think without immediately filtering those thoughts through the question of how they will be received. Room to make decisions based on what you actually want rather than what creates the least social friction. Room to be inconsistent, to change your mind, to try things that might fail publicly, without that potential failure feeling like a verdict on your worth as a person. Worth. That is the real thing underneath all of it. Approval seeking is never really about approval. It is about worth. It is about the deep, quiet, persistent fear that without external validation your worth cannot be confirmed, that without people nodding, agreeing, accepting, including, you cannot be certain you deserve to take up space. And that fear makes complete sense given how most people were conditioned, because from a very early age most people learned that love and acceptance were things you earned through behavior. Be good enough and you get warmth. Disappoint and you get distance. And the mind generalizes that lesson. It begins applying it everywhere. To friendships, to workplaces, to strangers on the internet whose opinions have zero relevance to your actual life. But worth is not confirmed by approval. Worth is not confirmed by anything external. Worth is either something you decide you possess, or it is something that remains permanently hostage to other people's moods and preferences. And other people's moods and preferences are completely outside your control. You cannot be stable if your foundation is built on something that shifts every time another person wakes up in a bad mood or projects their own insecurities onto your choices. That instability is what you feel as anxiety, as the constant low-level hum of not being sure you are enough, as the exhaustion of performing rather than existing, as the loneliness of being surrounded by people who know your performance but not your actual self. And the strange truth is, some of those people would like your actual self better. Some of them are exhausted by the performance too without knowing it. They can sense something is being managed, something is being withheld. Authentic people are magnetic in ways that perfectly curated people never are, because authenticity feels safe. It gives other people permission to also stop performing. And that permission is one of the rarest and most valuable things one human being can offer another. But you have to go first. And going first is terrifying, because when you stop seeking approval, you will lose some people. That is not a possibility, that is a certainty. Some relationships only existed because you were manageable, because you did not challenge, did not disagree, did not bring friction. You were easy to be around because you had quietly removed every part of yourself that might create discomfort. And when those parts return, when you start having opinions and boundaries and preferences and limits, some people will experience that as a problem. They will call it you changing. They will call it attitude. They will say you used to be easier to talk to. What they mean is you used to be easier to control. And losing those people, as painful as it feels in the moment, is not loss. It is information. It is the relationship revealing what it was actually built on. not genuine connection, not mutual respect, convenience, your convenience specifically. Your willingness to be a version of yourself that required nothing and gave endlessly, the relationships that survive your authenticity are the only ones worth having. Because those people did not need you to perform. They wanted to know you, and now they finally can. That is when connection becomes real. Not the performance of connection that most people settle for. Actual contact between two people who are both willing to be seen without editing. That is rare. Most people never experience it because most people never stop performing long enough to find out if it is possible. Here is what else happens when you stop seeking approval. Your decisions get faster, not reckless. Faster, because the decision-making process that used to involve extensive mental calculation of how each option would be perceived by various people in your life gets dramatically simplified. You begin asking one question instead of many. What do I actually want here? Not what will make people comfortable, not what will earn the most positive response, not what will make me look the most responsible or admirable or selfless. What do I want? And then you do that, and you survive the discomfort of people occasionally being disappointed by it, and you discover that their disappointment did not destroy you, and the next decision becomes a little easier, and the one after that easier still. That is how confidence is actually built, not through affirmations, not through people telling you that you are great, through repeatedly making your own decisions and surviving the aftermath, through discovering through direct experience that your judgment is trustworthy even when it disappoints people, through learning that you can handle disapproval without dismantling yourself to escape it, and slowly, without any dramatic moment, without any single conversation or revelation, your relationship with yourself begins to change. You start becoming someone you recognize, someone whose reactions make sense to you because they are yours rather than calculated responses to social pressure. Someone who can sit alone without needing to immediately reach for distraction or validation because the silence of your own company stops feeling threatening. Someone who can receive criticism without spiraling because your worth is no longer stored in other people's assessments of you. That version of you is not harder. That version of you is actually softer in the ways that matter. More genuinely kind because the kindness is chosen rather than performed out of fear. More genuinely generous because the generosity comes from actual care rather than the anxiety of being seen as selfish. More genuinely present because you are no longer spending half of every interaction monitoring how you are coming across. You know what people never tell you about stopping the need for approval? It feels lonely at first, very lonely. Because approval, even when it is hollow, even when it is earned through self-betrayal, still provides a kind of company, a kind of connection, a kind of confirmation that you exist and matter to someone. And when you stop performing for it, when you stop making yourself small and agreeable and easy, that hollow company disappears. And for a while, nothing fills the space. You have to sit in that space. That is the part nobody warns you about, and nobody can do for you. You have to sit with the discomfort of not knowing yet who you are when you are not performing. Of not knowing yet what you actually think about things you never let yourself think freely about. of not knowing yet which relationships will survive your authenticity and which ones were always just arrangements of mutual convenience. That sitting is not comfortable. It is necessary because on the other side of it is something most people spend their entire lives chasing without ever quite reaching. Not happiness exactly, not confidence exactly. Something quieter than both of those, a kind of internal steadiness. The experience of knowing that whatever happens today, whatever anyone thinks or says or decides about you, you will be okay. Not because life will go perfectly. Because your sense of yourself no longer depends on it going perfectly. Because your worth is no longer something other people are holding for you, that they can take back whenever they choose. It belongs to you, finally, completely. And that belonging, that quiet, unshakable sense of being enough without needing to prove it to anyone, that is what was waiting on the other side of all those years of performance. That is what you were always chasing when you sought approval, not the approval itself. The feeling you thought the approval would give you, it was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim.